All right, welcome guys. This is session 3 of our starter course for action figure design and 3D printing. Um, Last week we went over the head design and the torso. For homework, you guys had the pelvis and the lower legs to do. So today we're going to cover doing the shoulders, the arms, both upper and lower, as well as the thighs. And if we have time remaining, then I'll go over the pelvis and the legs. And let's go ahead and get started. Although I should probably turn off some of my little thingies that pop up before I go sharing my screen. There we go, disabled.
Yeah, you don't want people from the other class interrupting you.
Yes, right? Those jerks. All right.
Again, sorry about that.
Oh, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and launch into Sketchup. Did everybody get a chance to look at that video, that quick video I did of an alternate way of doing the head using the Follow Me tool?
Yes,
Okay, cool.
yes.
All right, cool. So I don't need to go over it again then. Yeah, it just kind of came to me after I'd done both Saturday and Sunday classes, the way that I did it with you guys, and it's like, huh, I wonder if this will work. In fact, I was thinking about doing that when I originally designed the head, but then forgot about it, I guess. Um, you know what? Actually, instead of opening up a brand new file, I'm going to open up the file that we've been working in. So there's minifig. All right. So one thing, London, in your file, I noticed in your pelvis, you had the 5 mm ball, and then you had the post grouped. Um, but they were two separate items rather than having them as um, a component together. I just wanted to point that out because if ever you decide that you need to make a change, like let's say, I mean, right now by our spec we've got a 2 mm post showing, but let's say you needed to be 3 mm all around, you'd only have to make the change in one place. So I just wanted to point that out real quick. All right, so let's go ahead and make some 90-degree ball sockets. I'm going to go ahead and delete these guys since they are components, and open this up, go to the little house, and I'm going to drag out a 10 mm ball and a 5 mm ball. A 5 mm is going to end up being our inside, the inside portion of our socket. And this we're going to resize so that it will be the outside. I want to have a 1.5 mm wall thickness all the way around my socket so that it has some strength to it. So 1.5 all the way around 5 is going to give us an 8 mm diameter ball. So let's go ahead and scale this guy. And I'm actually grabbing this back corner because you'll see how it is opposite of where the origin is at. I mean, I could do it here, but you can see how it goes farther away. All right, so we'll scale it at 0.8, enter, and that gives us an 8 mm ball. Okay, now I'm actually going to set this guy aside for just a second. The reason for that is because we are going to build out our void, what we're going to be cutting out of that. And it's going to get a little bit tricky. So I've got a 5 mm ball to start out with. I'm actually just going to go ahead and explode it. Actually, you know what? Let me Control Z back up. Shift H to show the hidden. And the reason I'm showing hidden is because I don't want, you notice the way that the geometry goes and how it has the focal point up here. When we go to cut this out, it's going to have cuts coming along here, and SketchUp might bork at that. So we're just going to make it as easy as possible for SketchUp as we can. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and rotate my ball that direction. Now, if I hide, geometry, it looks the same, but by having our apexes on the sides and cutting it this way, that's going to make it a lot easier for SketchUp. All right, so now I can explode. And I'm going to stay in this show hidden just so I can see what all I'm doing. Our post diameter, does anybody remember what the diameter of our posts are? No? They're 3 millimeters. We use 3 millimeter posts. So because I want there to be some movement, I don't want to be super, super tight, I'm going to give myself a 1/2 mil on either side of that post thickness. And so that's going to get me up to a 4 millimeter thickness. So let's go ahead and L for line. And I'm just going to drag a line out here just to give myself some space. And along the green, I'll hit 2, enter. And I'm just basically making a box. That's all I'm doing. This direction, 4, enter, constrain it to the red. There we go. I can get rid of that thing now. So now, since we know that it's going to be a cylindrical shape that we need to cut out of this guy. So what I'm going to do first is group this. I don't want to make any changes to it as a component, obviously, because that's going to make changes throughout the model. So that's why I exploded it first. But now I can group it. I don't have to worry about it making any changes. And if I run stuff into it, it won't be sticky. So, all right, so we've got this guy. We're going to just push-pull it up, just some random amount, doesn't matter how far. And this direction, we want it to be lined up with that apex there. And I am going to now tap Control, so I get that little plus, and I'm going to bring it down some. Doesn't matter how far, just as long as it's farther than the bottom of that guy. And the reason I hit Control is so that I get that line there. I want to preserve that. And I'm going to switch to my arc, come down here, here, and I'm going to have my bulge set at 2. That way it's a perfect hemisphere, or I guess hemicircle. All right, so I can now push-pull that, get rid of that. I can get rid of that. So it's all one piece. Doesn't matter, I'll soften those up, why not? Okay, now this is going to then become part of our void to cut out of here. And like I said, it's going to get a little bit tricky, but we're going to now push-pull from here to that apex. All right. Now I'm going to grab the whole thing, 1, 2, 3, move, M, Control, copy it, and I'm going to constrain it along the red. There we go. I'm now going to rotate it, Q, and this time, because we have a rounded portion here, we want one going around that side as well. You know what, we'll keep it simple, stupid. We will instead make this all one group, 1, 2, 3, make group, go inside of it, just so that we can be free. I'm going to switch to my L for line, and I'm going to just close that off so that I can control, push, pull that. And do the same thing on this side. Again, bulge of 2. And push, pull to get rid of all of that. And get rid of you. And I can soften those up. Okay, so now we've got this shape here where essentially what's going to happen is if we merge these two shapes together, this is going to be our void, that we cut out of that guy. However, we would like to have this a little bit bulged out. I mean, right now it's completely straight and flush along here, right? The reason we want to bulge it out is to make it easier for that ball to fit into that socket, just to give it a little bit of wiggle room. In order to do that, we're going to go back into here. I'm going to draw a guide up from here to about where the, here, let me back out of here. What I'm going to is about where this guy is at. In fact, if I constrain the blue to here, that looks like it's about 1.5. So that's what I'll go with. Go in here, T 1.5, enter, and I'll do another one this direction, 1.5, enter. And I'm going to again take here, oh, wrong one, that one. I want it to go that way. And what I'm going to be doing is we're actually going to be using this this Curvaloft skinning tool. So I want it to be straight for a little bit, about 1/2 mil, just enough to give our socket some more grip. So I am actually going to use our offset from that line, bring it out, 0.5, enter. Get rid of this one, get rid of these guys, and all right, that connects. And you can see Sketchup actually distorted the geometry from here to there is not straight up. So I'm going to instead bring it up 0.5 this direction, 0.5 that direction, because I want that to stay straight. I don't want SketchUp to go messing it up for me. So let's go back to our arc and draw one out to there. And we can get rid of those. So now if we jump back out of this shape, you can see where it's going to be flat along here. And that's going to give our socket a little bit more grip to hold on to that ball. Let's go back into this guy. I'm going to select that, move tool, control to copy, and constrain along the green. And I'm just mirroring it, putting it over here. So I've got it on both sides. Now, obviously these aren't equal, but they don't need to be. I'm going to select you. And let's see if I can use my offset trick. Oh, wait a minute. Here, this way it will. Double click that, hold down Shift, click that. So I've just got the lines. Now use the offset. That didn't work. Sorry. I was hoping that would, because when I use the offset with just that line, you can see how it doesn't quite want to stay connected to that edge, but it overlaps a little bit. All right. Let's see, how far out do we want to take this? Let's go with a 5 mil. All right. And I'm actually going to get rid of these guys. Let's copy that one over. Control, constrain to the green, over there, there. Oh. Interesting. Guess it's not fully connected. All right. Here we're going to grab like part of this and move it over. So I've got this arc here, switching to my move tool, and I'm constraining it to the green. And see, it's getting funky, but that's all right. I'm going to move it over too. All right. Don't really worry about what's going on in here. In fact, you know what? We'll even make it empty. Not a big deal. Here, in fact, I'm even going to back up a little bit for you. Here's what we'll do. We will push-pull this all the way down to here. and push pull that to there. By doing it this way, we're just going to focus on lines. We're not worried about what our planes are doing, what the faces are doing, because they're going to get all kinds of funky. So we're just focusing on our lines right now. And we're going to come up 5, strain, bring it over to this side, down. All right. And this is going to come out from this corner point, constrained to the green, 2. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, constrained to the green, 2. Okay, so you can see how it's starting to take shape a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Let's close that up, bring this out, 5, enter, and drag this guy over, and constrain to the green, move it over 2. All right, now here's where we're going to put our arcs. We're going to do it this way. And we will switch over to Arc Tool, grab here, and here's where it's going to get a little bit funky. I'm going to go with a bulge of 2. You can see here how much it's bulging out in that direction. I'm going to see if I can, you know what, I'm not even going to try to replicate it on the other side. Instead, what I'm going to do is grab that whole thing and control move it over. Now it doesn't want to let me flip because it's, you know, one line. And so instead we will add one line to it, make sure we have the whole thing, right click, flip along green direction. We can now get rid of that. And reconnect it. There. Now they're exactly the same. We don't have to worry about trying to replicate that exact angle. Now what we are going to do is we'll go ahead and get rid of that. And in fact, we don't need this either. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control and Erase to soften it all. Now if I jump back into hiding and grab that and get rid of the whole thing at once. Okay, so in order to use these Curveloft skin tools, I'm going to start grabbing just the lines that I want. So grabbing these guys. And you'll notice that this didn't come all in one package, so I've got to go one by one for each little line segment. All right, so now I've got the parts that I need. I'll hit this little tent looking one. There we go, check mark. And there, Curveloft figured out the geometry for me. Now, I can now then go through and do this all over again, or grab this and control move it over. Drain to the green so it doesn't get messed up, and flip along green. And of course, Curveloft automatically grouped everything for me so I can explode those. All right, so we're coming along. Now, we've got this little bit here that we don't need. Or actually, rather, let's build that up because we don't want this rounded part here. So I'll come back into here. I will push-pull you up to there and push-pull you to there. And you have the option. You can either try to drag this out. I'll show you what happens when you do. And over here. Doesn't look too bad this time, although that's not ideal. Let's see, can we finish that off? Nope. Sketchup doesn't like it. In fact, it's probably not completely flat. So there we go. Yeah, we might as well leave it like that. Although I will tell you this, that having your ball in a socket with this kind of shape will allow it to move this direction rather than forcing it to stay along a 90-degree turn. So perhaps in an elbow or in a shoulder, you may want it to have this added range of motion, but in a knee, you may not. So if you're going to be using like a ball joint for your knee, you may want to keep it like this so that as the ball with the post moves along it, it stays locked into that 90-degree angle. So I leave that up to you as to which one better suits the purposes of what you're trying to design. I, however, am going to leave it like this for this. All right, so let's get rid of the parts we don't need. We don't need that. So it's all cut open, that's fine. And you can see how it's coming together with that ball shape. So we will, in fact, I'll grab both of those and explode them. I will make them a group again. So now they're all one part. Jump inside of here, Control A to select everything, S for scale, and we're going to do our blow up trick. See, just so that Sketchup can intersect these properly. All right, so let's hit Shift H to so we are hiding the hidden geometry again. I'm going to select this guy and intersect faces with context. All right, so you can see that even at this scale, the SketchUp borked a little bit. It's got something funky going on here. In fact, if we zoom in on it, you can see what it did. Why it did that, I have no idea. In fact, sometimes when it does these weird things, I might even blow it up a second time just to see what happens. So let's try that here. Control A, S, go up again, another 100. All right, so we'll grab you and you, and this time I'm just going to go with intersect selection. And you see it did the same thing even at this scale. So there's something in the geometry here that SketchUp isn't happy with. So I'm going to manually fix that because I don't like what it's doing here. All right, so, but before I can fix it at the smaller scale. I don't have to be at a large scale to do that. So Control A, S, bring it back down 0.01, Z, and do it again. I don't feel like figuring out the math for it. All right. Now, it should be all by itself without grabbing anything else. Good. Hit delete. What else can we get rid of? There's something going on here. All right, so we'll switch to our eraser tool. Hold down Shift and Control to unsoften and unhide. All right. Where else? Is there anything where else? All right. Oop. So we can get rid of you and you. Need those lines or those. Something going on here, so we'll soften that up by eraser and control. There we go. I'm going to view the hidden, switch to my select tool and Control A, right click and unhide. It might not have done anything, but sometimes SketchUp will add extra lines and hide them for you, but not soften them. So what I do is I just view all, select all and unhide them, and then I can go looking for them. All right, so I don't need that part, and I don't need that part. And I'm going to fix this portion here. Let me switch back to there. And look, it looks like scaling it back down to this size fixed whatever issue that was. So I guess thank you, SketchUp. All right. This thing is going to be our 90-degree void. I'm going to, again, switch back to select, Control A, and I'm going to flip all of those faces, reverse faces. because that's what we want to be inside of our socket, right? Now this thing, I'm going to make a component. And I'm going to give it a name. And I'm going to call it 90 deg wall socket. Actually, it's a 5mm one, so we'll go with 5mm 90 socket. There we go. And the reason I'm making this a component, obviously this is not in a state that we would want to use it in the finished product. However, we will be able to, it'll be a tool that we can then use later on at any time that we need to make a 90-degree socket with a 5mm ball joint. So let's get back to this guy. We'll move you out of the way now. And we'll focus on our limb part. If we take a look at our specs, where I have limb specs, open that up. We're actually using one part, this top portion, and it services both the upper arm and the thigh. So one part does both things for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this upper part and make that a component, and then we'll add a ball and post, and we'll add this C-clip to it, and then make those components. All right, so first of all, we've got our 8mm ball, and we've just created our 5mm 90-degree socket. I'm not going to go ahead and add it yet. I'm going to finish building out the rest of the limb first. Part of that you can see is we've got 4mm that direction, 3mm from the bottom of the limb to right here where it connects. So that's going to be a little bit tricky. We'll have to play around with our guidelines to figure that one out. And then we've got some rounded portions here. And if we take a look at the bottom section, cross section here, we can see that it's 4mm thick and 4 that direction. And then we've got on our arc a bulge of 1mm. So let's go ahead and create that flat shape, and then we'll just push pull it up until it seats wherever it is that we want it to seat. So back into Sketchup. Again, move you out of the way again. I'm going to start out with a rectangle, and I'm just going to make it 4 by 4. And I can now use this guy. You can see it's got that green in the middle. That means that we're flat, so that's good, as opposed to it being on some other kind of angle, like now it's blue, or if it were black, it'd be somewhere in the middle. All right, I'm going to hit 1, enter. So there we've got a 1mm bulge. Same thing on this side. Again, making sure it's green. 1, enter. Come on, enter. There we go. All right, so I can get rid of these, get rid of those. And we need it to be at least 3mm from the bottom to right there. Okay, so what we're going to do is push pull you up 3, enter. You, I'm actually going, because it's still the 10mm ball, I'm just going to go ahead and explode that and regroup it. There we go. When we think about the direction of how this is going to slice into it, you know, is it going to, when we cut this out here, in fact, I'll even move it into place. When we cut that out, is it going to slice more easily with the apex up here or on the side? So that's something else that you're going to have to look at when you're considering, you know, cutting these sockets into place. I think that I'm going to go ahead and rotate it, just because generally if you have your apexes on the outsides of where you're and not inside of where you're cutting, it works out better. All right, so there we go. We've rotated that. I'm now going to move this so it's going to be lined up. So grab it by the apex, constrain it to red, and lining up right there. I'll move it up some to get it out of the way. Constrain to the blue. Grab it by that center, that equator, if you will, constraining it to the green, and finding a midpoint. There it is. Now this has already been push-pulled up to 3, so all we have to do is, in fact, you know what? Let me go ahead and group it. 1, 2, 3. Make group. I'm going to move down until, constraining to the blue, until I see that edge disappear. There it is. In fact, I'm looking for right here where it goes to disappear, and that was 1.2. Let's see what 1.1 looks like. All right, that looks pretty good. I'll go with that. So now on this guy, I'll go inside of here and just push-pull it up another, I don't know, I'll say 1.5. Doesn't really matter. It's going to get cut away. All right, so here we go. If I switch to X-ray, you can see it's inside of there. And this is more or less our limb part, with the exception of having the void cut out of it. What we're going to do is grab this guy and shift, grab that one. I'm going to come to Tools, Outer Shell. We'll see how it works at this scale. It may require a blow up, but we'll try it out. Yep, see how it dropped a couple of faces on me? All right, Control Z. I'm going to group all this just to make it easier on myself. Go inside, Shift A, S, blow it up. Come on, this direction. There we go. 100, Shift Z. And just so you know, when you're using the outer shell function, the two things that you're going to be combining have to be grouped together and they have to be solid. Meaning that if this had a part missing when you went to try to group them, like let's say you just had a cylinder and, well, you know what, do that. So you made a cylinder and it was like a cup like this. You go, I mean, granted, when you look at it, when it gets cut out, it shouldn't matter, but it'll matter to Sketchup. You can see it throw an error here saying that one of these objects is not a solid or is locked. Well, we know none of them are locked, but one of them is not a solid either. So I'll just, there we go, put that back. Grab these two guys. Make sure everything is pushed up into there, nothing's exposed, good. Tools, outer shell. You can see that it just merged all those into one object for me and got rid of anything that I didn't need. So perfect, that's exactly what we wanted. I'll explode that because it's already inside of a group. Scale it back down, 0.01, enter. All right, now we're ready to cut our void out of it. So this guy here, I will line it up so that it is exactly centered, and it'll be easier if I can see those that hidden geometry. So M for move, I'll grab it by here, constrain it to the green, line it up with that equator, good. And here, this center point, we're going to constrain along the blue and line up with that apex there. And we're going to do the same thing, moving it inwards along the red, again, lined up with U. Good. So this is what our cutout is going to end up looking like. And you can see it's got a bulge here that'll make it a lot easier to push that ball into this socket. So it'll have some room for us. And it's got the cutouts here for the posts. Now, one thing we need to take a look at is we've only got 2 millimeters of post showing. So is that going to be enough? Well, let's do a quick measurement. We can see where it's going to be getting cut out. I switch to my measuring tool. I'll come from right here, straight up, out of X-ray, 2.1. So that means that this, right where it's at right here, from here down, is just a little bit over that 2 mil. So that tells me that right here is probably going to be just a little bit over. And so that means that if we put this piece onto our torso then it's going to be a very tight, and it may not even fit because we may not have enough of our post showing. So we have choice. We can either extend the length of our post to 2.5, or we can make some modifications here. If we make modifications here, like, well, do we want this to remain centered along with the outer one, or we can move it up a little bit and out a little bit. So the inner socket won't be exactly lined up with this outer sphere, which is the direction that we're going to go. So I'm going to move you, move tool. I'm constraining along the red. It doesn't have to be much. I'm only going to go with 0.5. And the same direction up. All right, so now you can see that it is that apex no longer lines up with that apex. When we put our ball into this socket, it's not going to be exactly centered within this sphere, but there will be enough room for this piece to fit up against the torso. All right, so now let's go ahead and cut out this void. Again, like I said, this is going to be a bit tricky, so I'm going to grab everything here, make it all a group. And again, the reason for that, well, in this particular case, there's nothing else going on because I've deleted it. But if you were in another project of your own, you had a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of other parts here, and you weren't deleting them, then you would make them all a group just so you're not messing with anything else. Go inside it, Shift A, S, let's blow it up. Okay, now we're going to explode everything. Explode. And switch to this view. And here is where we want it cut, right? So I'm just going to grab this guy and intersect faces with context. It doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's a little bit wiggly along in here, but that's just something SketchUp does, and you're going to have to accept it and move on. All right, so now let's just see. Do I grab anything else? No, good. In fact, I'll delete that. My bounding box isn't changing, so I'm free to do some work while I'm inside of here. I'm not going to get rid of these outer ones because that's going to change my bounding box size. But let's see what else I can get rid of, if anything. No, I think that's probably it because I want these parts, right? Preview, that looks good. All right, let's go ahead and grab everything, select all, S, shrink it back down. And let's clean up and get rid of what we don't want. So that means you, 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 and you. Just making sure that's not getting rid of anything inside of here, which is why I'm doing it like one face at a time. All right, and you can see it does some weird stuff here. So in fact, if I switch back to this view and just unsoften, that looks a little better, right? All right, so now I can get rid of these parts. And let's see if my cleanup will just get rid of the rest of it for me. There we go. All right, so now we've got this void here. We've got our socket. It's got a cutout to allow for the post to be able to move in either direction, and it's got some carved out bit here to allow for the ball to fit into that socket a little more easily. Now, at such a small scale that we're working on, these parts are going to flex, and you should be able to get this ball inside of this socket because it doesn't have to flex a whole lot. However, let's say that instead you were doing a figure that was an 8-inch tall figure. In this case, this probably wouldn't be enough because you're going to be having a much thicker amount of plastic. You're going to be having a much larger ball to fit into it. And so you might want to put some cuts along in here, just like we did with that C-clip for the torso. Probably, and for the neck. So you'd probably want to put some cuts coming along in here, and you'd also want to, from here, have a hole that punches straight out the other side to allow for air to escape. But again, at a figure the size that we're doing, that's not really necessary. So just
Could,
something to keep in the back of your mind.
Christian, could you use the tape measure tool and just kind of measure across the gap,
Sure, where at?
right horizontally from
Sure.
side to side? I'm just curious of what that measures at. So
There you
even
go.
though it's 4 millimeters, our our 5 millimeter ball will push in there. It'll just spread the sides apart and snap
Yep.
in.
It's going to be tight and it might hurt your thumb a little bit pushing it in, but it'll fit.
All right.
Because, but like I said, if you are nervous, like if you're doing a larger figure, then because well, you think about it, it only has to flex, like a half a mil in each direction, right here where you've got it, thinner than everywhere else. So that's at this scale, that's okay. But like I said, at a larger scale, you would want to accommodate for that. You might want to put a cut through here, and you definitely want to punch a hole through here to allow air to escape.
Thanks.
Sure. All right, so now we've got that part done. We're going to make you into a component, and I'm just going to call you limb. Yes, I know. There we go. Actually, I'm going to make it a 5 mil limb. Just I don't plan on doing any other millimeter sized limbs in this particular model, but who knows? Maybe in a model that you're going to be working on, you will. So there we go. We've got our limb. Now we're ready to make it into either a shoulder or into a thigh. Now, one thing I will point out is like where here where it looks all jagged and nasty. That's just what happens when SketchUp goes to try carving things or merging things with rounded parts with rounded faces. It just doesn't like it, and so um, at this scale, now we're looking at something extremely close up. If you were to look at it with like actually physically in your hand, 4 millimeters is not very big at all. Um, so these little jaggies aren't going to show up at all in your final print. So just keep that in mind. So it's not like when you do print it out, it's going to look like this. Now, granted, if I were to blow this whole thing up to 4 inches across, then yeah, that's going to show. Okay, so we've got a limb part. Let's go ahead and make it into an arm part. And we can do that by just coming down to our components. And give myself a little bit room to see what's going on here. And I'm looking for this 5 millimeter ball post. To drag one of those out. Flip you over. Oh, let's go down. There you go. And I'm just centering this up with that and center it in this direction. There's that midpoint. And from here, constrain the blue to the face, and again constrain the blue in 1 mil. And that gives me a 2 millimeter post with a 5 millimeter ball on it. Okay, so there is our upper arm. We will grab all of that and make component and call you upper arm. I'm now going to explode and get rid of that because our upper arm is saved in here now. There it is right here. So I don't actually have to have it out in my workspace. I'll close that up. Now moving on to the C-joint portion. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to draw out that flat shape that matches these specs, and we're just going to push pull it so that it's that 3 mil depth. All right, so let's take care of that part first. I'm going to move you out of the way. And it's always easier to work looking straight down, so there we go. All right, so what do we need? We need a portion here that is 5 millimeters. I don't know if you can see it or not, but here, let me see if I can zoom in for you. There we go. All right, so it is 5 millimeters across, and from, let's see, we've got 2.2 up to that rounded portion, and we've got 3.5 to there. So we're trying to figure out what is the whole thing. Well, this is actually a circle if we use our imaginations to complete it all. So we're going to use the circle tool to create some of these parts. So let's go ahead and start with the circle portion of it. We know it's a 5 millimeter diameter. So C for circle, and I'll just come right from here. 2.5 gives me a 5 millimeter diameter. Okay. What else do we need? The inner portion here, we know it's 1.5 from the edge. Okay. So we'll use our offset. 1.5, enter. Okay, we've got those lines now. It's that portion. And then we know that it's 2 mil inside of here, but we don't know. Oh, and it's 1.5 there. We don't have any kind of measurement though for telling us how long that is supposed to be and how far across that is. So here's again where our experience and intuition come in, and where we try to experiment to figure out what's going to work best. I'm going to come into here, and SketchUp gives me these line segments, so it makes it a little easy to pair stuff up. I know that I want it to have at least 3/4 grip around the post that it's going to be holding on to. So if I take, like, there's half would be right here. 3/4 would be around this guy, somewhere in between here. So I'm going to go with from that one. Let's switch my line tool. And now you could try to, well, here, let's go back to here. This doesn't look like it's a straight line going towards the center. So we don't have to, we can play around with it. Because if it were a straight line, if we're coming from here out, it'd probably be about like this. And that might not give us enough grip. So we want it to have as much material there as possible, as much to be able to grip that post as possible to give us a nice tight joint. But it has to be open enough to be able to allow the post to fit in. So we can see here 2 mil. That's the size that the post that's going to fit inside of here. So we got to make sure that this opening is at least that, if not a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is switch to my tape measure tool and just come down here. Just give myself some guides. I'm not actually going to use anything or snap anything to them, but it gives me a guideline of, like, okay, this is where that's going to be fitting in. You know, this is the path that that post is going to take, and how much do I want it to actually grip around it. So if I take it from here, that is nowhere near big enough for that to be able to flex. But if I take it from here, that doesn't, let's see, this, if I, you can see down here, that is 0.3 millimeters. And so that's not much that it has to flex at all. So that should be okay. So I could take it to there. That's a lot of excess room that I probably don't need, that I might want, I should say. And if I take it to here, well, that's not that far there. That'll fit in there. So I'll go to that point. And again, line it from here over that one. And I'll pick its match. There we go. I can get rid of these guys. They were just guides in there. So there's our C in that portion of it. Now to figure out how much do we need here? Well, we know that from the top of this point to that point, that's 3.5. So I will draw out some lines, and I'm going to have it straight. So if you think about where, you know, the point that's outmost from here, I'm just going to pick some random amount. Doesn't have to be exact. We'll make it exact later. And bring that down. There we go. Now I can draw out some guides. To start out with, we'll go to this top point there. That gives us a starting point, and we'll drag one up 3.5. That was 3.5, right? Yes. All right, so now we know where that has to be. We can draw a line across there and get rid of what we don't need. And that includes that portion. And there we go. There's the C clip portion that's going to fit into our at the bottom of our limb of our thigh. And if we look here, we know that it is 3 millimeters deep. So we'll just push pull that. 3. Enter. Have the whole thing. Make group and rotate it. Just using the move tool M. And that direction. There we go. So now I'm going to center this on our limb. Now, if Sketchup is giving you trouble, like I can't get to that portion there, you just switch to X-ray view and it'll line up. And this direction. I'm waiting until I see that midpoint in group. Click, constrain it to the red, and find that center point. There it is. All right. Now, if we look here, it says 1/2 mil from that edge to that edge. So we'll just confirm that. Switch to my tape measure from there to there. All right, that's about 0.6. And what is it on the other side? That's about 0.5. So, oh, there it is. There's 0.6. So it looks like this is a little bit off of what the schematics say. However, it's not going to affect our print. Let me just double check what the thickness of this is. Yeah, it's 5. It's what it's supposed to be. So we should be okay. One thing I am going to do is, because right now the very top edge of this is lined up with the very bottom edge of that. There's no overlap. So I'm going to go into here, just push pull it up 1, go back out. Now there's that overlap. So when it goes to print, I don't have to actually merge these things together, but when it goes to print, they'll print merged, just like we did with our ball and post. All right, so there is our thigh. We will now grab all of that and make it a component. We'll call you thigh. Okay, we can get rid of that. All right, next is, let's see, 9 o'clock. We got an hour left to go, so we might be able to get in some of the stuff that was for homework. Excellent. The next thing is our forearms and hand. Let's go here. Here we go. Let's start with this part. There you go. So drag out our components again. I'm going to drag out a 10 mil ball, close you up. And what I'm starting with is this shape here. Where'd my mouse go? Oh, stuck on the, so there it is. It got stuck on the wrong monitor. All right, back into here. I'm going to resize you because I want it to be a 8 millimeter ball. So 0.8, enter. And I'm going to explode that. All right, let's go ahead and move you so that you're on the origin just to make it a little easier to deal with. M tool, grab it by that, and plop it there. Okay, so in order to make that shape, first thing we're going to do is we've got the 8 millimeter ball part. We're going to cut that in half. So line it up so that this guy is as straight as possible. not angled up or down, and just select everything under it. Hit delete. We'll now finish off that and unsoften. All right, so we got that part. Now to bring it down, we know it is 7.6 mil down to the bottom. Okay. Push pull. 7.6. Enter. I'm going to switch to X-ray view, and I just want to soften all of these guys. So E, Control. There we go. That took care of all of them. Now this portion here needs to be 7.6 mil diameter, or, and you see I put in here 70% of 8 millimeter. So we can do this, S, hold down Control so it's from the center. You can see it just brings it all in, and it is 70, so 0.7, 1, 7. Oh, while you're doing this with Control, it won't let you type, so what you do is you just click, don't touch anything, 0.7. Okay, now we're good. I'll just go ahead and confirm my measurements. There it is, 5.6. Now, I'm going to show you another way that you could have done this, other than dragging that out and scaling this. And that is delete, delete. All right, there. If you have the exact measurements, so I know it's from this center point, come on, line up with that origin. There it is. In order to get a 5.6, that's going to be 2.8. Double check that. There we go. Now if I grab that and hit move, training along the blue, 7.6, enter. And there we go. That gave us the exact same shape. So I just want to show you both methods. Soften all these guys up. E, Control. There we go. All right, so now we've got that portion. Now we need this part, the wrist, and that has a 1 millimeter inset, and it's a 2 millimeter pull. So we'll come along here, offset 1, and pull that down 2. And let's soften those up. There we go. Now we've got a wrist. Now for this hand portion. Now we may go off, we're going to go off spec a little bit just because these hands, I want them to be able to grip the 3 millimeter weapons or accessories that you decide to make a little bit more easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this block portion. And it looks like that cut off. That's not good. But all right, so it is 5 mil there, 5.6 from here all the way out to there. So let's go ahead and build that portion first. Let's see, do I have anything telling you how far from here to here? I believe it's a square, 5. Yeah, it is. Okay. So this I'm going to group and move you out of the way. Rectangle, 5, 5. Pull it up, 5. There we go. Let's get the back of the hand, which is this portion. You can see it's 0.6. I'm going to control push pull it out 0.6. All right. And you can see it's got these rounded chamfers all the way around. Chamfers are kind of a pain in the ass in SketchUp, but I'll show you how to do them. We are going to switch to our arc tool, and let's see, can we, no, it won't let me. All right, drag that out 0.6, well, we'll do it on the side, down 0.6, so it's squared off here to there, and no, it doesn't want to let me, it's too small. All right, because I'm going to scale this guy up. Now, be very careful because hiding inside of here is that upper arm. So if we hit Control A, it's gonna grab that as well and scale that. We don't want that to happen. So just to make sure, I'm gonna make it a group, go inside of it. Now I don't have to worry about it. All right, so from here, 0.6 scaled up by 100 is going to be 60. All right, arch tool. There we go, that looks better. We'll push pull U. I guess I don't need it x-rayed right now. Same thing on this side. 60. Enter. Arc tool. A for arch. Looking for that cyan, there it is. All right, now it gets a little bit tricky. So, because we've rounded this portion out, but we haven't rounded out these sides. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to draw this back out again. Let's go to here, to here. All right, we don't need to do the bottom one, just the top. Oop, I did 6. Let's go 16 instead. And same thing on the other side, 60. Arches on there. From here to here. Oh, I want to do that. I want to pull you down all the way or past. That's fine. What we're doing is creating the shapes that are going to cut out the other shapes. All right. You can see if I switch to X-ray, that actually goes all the way down. And I'll hit Shift to select both of those. And I'm going to intersect faces with context. All right, let's see if that worked. E, erase, start cutting away. There we go, that's looking pretty good. And you, and you. There we go. Although inside of it, we've still got a face hanging out in there. We will jump inside of this shape and just get rid of that. There it is. All right, let's shrink all that back down. S, 0, 1, enter. Now, because we messed with the bounding box of what we originally blew up, you'll notice that this is far from the origin point. And now we have to move it. So if you had things, let's say you had this position just right on the torso, now it would be a completely different spot. So because I'm not too worried about that right now, because it's just one other part and it's not in the spot where it needs to be, I went ahead and I did my editing at that larger scale, but it's just something to keep in mind when you start doing that. All right. So it moved it in relative to its own one and way off of our main one as well. You know what? I'm going to show you something real quick. Let's you back to where you were at. This is a perfect opportunity to use this tool, our axis tool. And I'm just going to put my endpoint right here, set the red, set the green, and there the axis is. Check that out. Now, it might not always line up with where the outside one is. It just happened to be that way this time, but rather than moving it all the way over, would be another way to get that positioned where you want it to be relative to the origin point. All right, so we've got that portion of it, which is this guy. We now need to cut a hole in it for our 3mm accessories. So we're going to go to circle and figure out where on this guy do we want our grip to be. So I'm going to start by making that 3mm diameter circle, so 1.5, enter. This is grouped, so I don't have to worry about it sticking. And I'm just going to move you where I think you will be of a good place to grab a hold of it. Again, just like with the C-clip, we wanted to have as much of that grip as possible, but not too much. So I think that probably looks good right where it's at. But I am going to move it inside of this a bit, so we'll constrain it to the red. You know what? I might even put it right there, because if I have my fingers wrap around this direction and the thumb come around that direction, it's still going to have all of this grip, and the thumb is mainly there for aesthetics, to look like a thumb, not to actually provide a huge amount of gripping force. So that looks good. I'm going to hit Control X to cut. Inside of here, edit, paste in place. And you can see it got a little bit, it didn't really like it, so that's okay. I can get rid of that line. I'm going to finish this one up just so that I can use it to push-pull the rest of it. In fact, I can get rid of that. And I'm not going to want this super skinny part, so I'm going to trim it right here. Just because that little tiny bit wouldn't print anyway. All right, so there's where our grip is going to be. Now, this is not enough to really hold on to that accessory. So it's still going to need the fingers coming around. It's still going to need a little bit of the thumb, but we've given it as much chance to hold on to stuff as we can. Let's go ahead and reverse those faces. There we go. Now we're ready to make some fingers. So we will move out of the way while we make a finger. Now these fingers, you can make whatever ones you like. I just used 2mm diameter half spheres with like 1 mil in between them, and then set them at 30-degree angles. If you want to make more robotic looking ones or more cylindrical ones, that's up to you. In fact, for this class project, would you guys prefer rounded fingers or squared off fingers?
Maybe squared.
Okay. Then squared it shall be. All right, so to figure out our fingers, we will, and because they're squared, that's going to make it easy. We're going to start with our rectangle tool, R, and we're going to do one knuckle, and we will say one, call it two. Let's see, I could get away with making it a bit fatter than that. Let's say 2.3. What I'm visualizing in my head is what it's going to look like from the side. So I think this from the side, as it relates to right here, should probably be pretty good. So we're going to push-pull this guy up, 2. That should be a square, it is. I'm going to grab that, move it, constraining it along with the green. Let's say a quarter of a, so that's 0.25. Same thing in this direction for this guy. 0.25, and oh, it went the wrong way. No, it didn't. Yeah, that doesn't look right. Constrain along the green, 0.25. Okay, I guess must have been the angle. I'm going to group you, rotate it. All right, so now we've got like one knuckle segment. We're going to go with, say, 1, 2, 3 of them total. So this guy, I'm going to create a copy, drag it up. And I'm going to line it up right there. And I'm going to rotate you, shift, maybe a little bit more than that. I'm going to keep these grouped together. I'm not going to merge them. And you'll see why in a second. All right, we'll go with that one. We'll make another copy. From that point to that point, and rotate you around. And let's say right there, 30-degree angle looks good. All right, so we've got a squared off looking finger. I'm going to want one of these guys to have more of a taper to them. So I'm going to go inside this one, grab a hold of this, move it, constrain it to the, if you take a look at where the origin is at, what direction our angles are going. So red. Oh, come on. That again. There we go. So there's my taper. That looks better. And now all of this I'm going to make into a component and call you finger. And I will rotate you around this direction. Oh, not quite all the way. There it is. And I'm going to take this point and line it up here. We'll take you, rotate you around. Move it so it looks good and it's in place. All right. Now, one thing that we can do, and this isn't going to be part of the final model, but it'll give us a good guide of what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and create that thing for it to grip. So 1.5, enter, and I'm just going to push pull it out. whole thing group, and push pull this direction too. Come on. And I'm just basically creating a quick guide for ourselves. So now we can move our fingers around and figure out exactly where we want them to go and how they're going to interact with whatever gets put in their hands. So here, I have a little bit of room to bring them in. There we go. And we'll make some additional ones. And times 2. You can see that end up squishing out a little bit too far. So what we're going to do is go inside of here, Control A, scale it this direction a little bit. Let's go with 0.7. All right, let's go ahead and move you back over. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to delete that and recopy them so that I know that they're all where they need to be. Green here, and this time divided by 2. Now they're evenly spaced. Excellent. Now, if you wanted, you could have these things touch. You could also have the bottom one wrap around a little bit more and the top one open more, so it's more of a relaxed grip. You see some of the transformer hands do that. Now let's say I want that to wrap around a little bit more, give it a little bit more grip. So I'm going to come into one of these guys. Because I made a component, it'll affect all of them. One of these guys. I want to see how much I need to move it. So Window, Model Info, and uncheck that hide. There we go. We can see the rest of the model. I'm going to grab this guy, rotate you around by this point. Oh, I want to rotate it by that point, don't I? And let's go ahead and move both of these from here. Yeah, it's a little bit tighter of a grip. But it does cut into here a little bit, and that means that should be okay, because that just means that these fingers are going to have to flex a little bit to get out of the way. But that's going to make for a really tight grip on your whatever it is that you put in there. So I think that should be all right. It's not a huge amount. It's just a smallest fraction of a millimeter. So I'll tighten this grip up a little bit too. Not too much, just a little bit. There we go. So now here and here, it's going to force the fingers to flex open just a little bit to make that grip nice and tight. Although our guy needs a thumb. So we will grab one of these, make a copy of it. You can make your own unique thumb if you wish, or you can recycle a part. I choose to recycle because I'm very environmentally conscious like that. All right, we'll move you around. Let's line you up with that corner. All right, that's not quite how I want it to be lined up, so we'll move it a little bit. You can see now it actually intersects with those fingers, which means that they won't have the opportunity to flex and get out of the way. So if you want, when you're building your fists, when you're building your hands, if you want them to be completely rigid like this, it's a better idea to build out the entire hand first and then use a shape to cut a hole for your post. Or do something like this and then cut the hole through. The reason being is so that then you can have the inside of these get cut out appropriately instead of wrapping it around. So here I need it to be open a little bit. So I can move you up a little bit more. All right, so now it's not touching. So that means that these will be able to flex to get out of the way. Bring it down as close as I can. There, that should be good. But now it's sticking up all over here. So I could explode this, make it something unique, rather than having it be a copy of these other fingers. But I still wanted to, I think I'm going to keep it as a copy. That way, in case I decide to open things up or change sizes, I'm all right. I'm actually going to go ahead and scale this a bit. And scaling it isn't going to affect the other ones because it's something that's being applied to it outside of the component. So let's bring that down that direction a little bit. Bring it down that direction a little bit. There we go. And we'll move you over a little bit more. Scale you up this direction. There we go. All right, so now we've used this component, which is identical to these guys, but it has a transformation being applied to it from outside of the component. So it's scaled, it's a little bit different in dimensions, but it still retains all of the benefits of being a component. One thing it doesn't have, though, is it doesn't intersect with this. So there's the possibility that when it gets printed, it may push out or not be connected properly. So I'm just going to move this guy over just a little bit, constrained to the red, just so it intersects. 0.25, that's all we need. Usually I go with a half, but you can see what it's doing to inside of here. So to get around that, I'm going to rotate this. There we go. So now it's not intersecting with the thing it's supposed to be gripping. A little bit here, but that's all right. And it's got plenty of intersection with this chunk, so it'll all get printed at one go and not fall apart on you. This we can get rid of. And there we go. There's our fist. Let's go ahead and put that in place. We will group this. And the reason I'm grouping it and not making a component is because it's going to be inside of this arm component. So we're not going to be actually using this thing here by itself anywhere else. All right. Go ahead and put you in place. Actually, since you're low, I'll move you over. That's lined up that way. It's now lined up that way. Now, according to our spec sheet, we've actually got it on a little bit of an angle here. And that's going to, again, you can see the cutout here, or the dotted line rather here. So there's a little bit of an overlap, again, so that it'll print. But if you want yours to be straight, rigid like this, you can do that. Just make sure that you have that overlap so that these two will print as a solid unit. Let's go ahead and rotate this. I'm going to use the move tool to do it. There. And move you over so that you look good. Let's see, do I get a midpoint? There it is. And line up with that one. And move it up a little bit. Come on, up you go. All right, there we go. There's our hand. Now we need a bit of a socket in here, don't we? So that we can actually move the thing around and attach it. So we'll come back to our components. We'll find our 5mm 90 socket. Drag that out. maneuver this in place. We want it to go that direction this time. This time we don't have the apex here to line up on the side, but we do know that this is the halfway point. So there, line up this guy to there. Let's make sure it's centered. So we know that this is a center point. So from there, constrained by the red with that apex. And inwards from here, constrained by the green to that apex. All right, now it's centered, but we're going to run into that same issue where the 2mm post isn't going to be able to fit properly in here. So we're going to move it out on the green by 0.5, up on the blue, again another 0.5. There we go. Now we've got our void cutter in place. We're going to go ahead and cut that out. We don't need to grab the whole thing, so I'm going to grab the void cutter and that shape, make them a group, go inside, and move the whole thing up 100, explode them, and here, and don't forget that part too, and intersect faces with context. There we go. Shrink it back down. And start getting rid of the parts we don't need. When I grab something, I always make sure it doesn't extend beyond what I want, because sometimes Sketchup will forget, like, oh, I didn't realize you wanted that line there. So, and you. All right, let's get rid of some of these lines. Clean up. There we go. All right, that void cutter worked like a charm. And so now we can grab all of that, make you a component, and we will call you lower arm, or forearm, I guess would be better. Forearm. Okay, so we've got our entire arms. We've got our chest, our torso, our head. You did the pelvis for homework and the legs, lower legs for homework. We've also got our thighs now, so we should have the entire figure. We've got about 25 minutes. Do you want me to continue with building the stuff that you should have done for homework, or should I go into using your scenes and your layers, which is something that I wanted to cover? Is everybody comfortable with what was assigned for homework last week and the parts that you built?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, cool. All right, in that case, we're going to, I'm not going to focus on the pelvis or the lower legs. Instead, here I will save you, and I am going to just go to my master one real quick, and where I've already got the pelvis and the legs built. All right, there's a leg, and there's a pelvis. C, here, Control V. Oh, looks like it grabbed more than I wanted. Because I don't want to grab too much, or else it'll bring those additional components in with it. All right, so let's just do this. There's the leg, leg. All right, that's not what I want. And there we go. So now if we check out our components, they should be in there. There's leg, and there's pelvis. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and drag out the whole guy. I can close you up. Nope. Close you up. All right. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and drag out all the parts that we're going to need. We need we got up one forearm, good. We need a head. There's a head. We've got a leg, got a pelvis. We need a thigh, a torso, and an upper arm. All right, there we go. There's our dude and all of his parts. Let's start putting them together. From here, constrained by the green to there. Here, constrained by red on this center point. There it is. From here down and then back up one. All right, head's in place. Torso. Put you in place. I believe it's a half a mil down. Looks like it's quarter, 0.25. Looks better. It's got a little bit on top and a little bit on the bottom. And is it lined up inside that C-clip? Yep, good. Torso's in place. Build out some limbs. Start with you. Here's our upper arm. Let's put you into place. Grabbing it by the apex in that center portion of the socket, and I'm keeping my eyeballs on right where the center. I can't gesture with my hands or with my mouse right now. I'm keeping my eyes on fixed on where the center point of this 5mm ball is, and then I move my mouse point to where that is, and that should be lined up. All right. All right, you will move over. Get in roughly the right spot. Move it out of the way a little bit. Again, so I can do that same trick of right here is the center point on that ball. And so I'm keeping my eyes on, so I'll click here, but I'll look, and then I'll look over here before I move it. And I just keep my eyes locked to that intersection, to that point, so that the ball will be centered in the socket. Now it looks like I got to move it over just a little bit. There it goes. And that looks centered in there. All right, we've got an arm. Let's put a leg on. Again, same thing. I'm moving it out of the way just so I can see where this point right here is. Because I know that's going to be like at the equator that direction and that direction. So I just want to make sure that I see where that is, grab it by this apex, keep my eyeballs on that centered point, and try to get it to line up with it. There it is. Of course, right now you can see it's intersecting here, telling us that our figure won't be able to have his arms straight down, which isn't too big of a deal. Though if it is to you, then by all means extend this out, make your torso a little bit wider. All right, let's put you into place. Come on. And again, see, it doesn't want to lock on because I can't mouse over anything, so I'm just going to switch it to X-ray view, and now it will. All right, so we'll grab it by the top of that cylinder and line up right there. Now we've got a leg in place. Now for the other limbs, what we're going to do is grab you and you. I'm going to make that a group. I could make it a component, but I'm going to keep them grouped so that I have the freedom to be able to reposition them without, I mean, if they were components and I decide I'm going to bend this arm, then both arms would bend. So rather than doing that, I'm just going to keep them as groups. And same thing with the legs for posing later on. Not that it really matters at this point. All right, make a copy. Flip along the group's red direction. There we go. Now we have an opposing limb. And I'm going to move this into place the same way I did with the others. Grabbing here and then looking for this point right here. Looks good. And we'll do the same thing with the legs. Group. Move that over. Control copy. Flip along the group's red. And let's so I can keep fixed on where that is. There we go. All right, there's our little man. So now we've got, this is our work area. This is where we're going to go back to anytime that we have changes that we want to make. So we will go ahead and first save the figure. We're going to go into our layers palette, which we haven't touched on yet. Because I'd already done this and grabbed it over, that's why this print one is here. So I'm going to delete you. Actually, you know what, yeah, I should be able to delete it. Move into the default, okay. All right, so now we're starting off with where you're going to be at. I'm going to create new layers, and I'm going to name it working or work. I'm going to be creating 3 different scenes. Three. A work scene, a pose scene, and a print scene. So I want to have a layer for each of those. So we're going to go, there's our work one, our pose, and our print. Everything here is going to be on the work layer. So we will grab all of that. And we will, if we come to entity info, you can see what layer it's on. We're going to drop that down and select work. Okay. All right, and we are going to uncheck print, uncheck pose. Always leave layer 0 there unchecked. Otherwise, it could throw off, like you might have parts that are like one line might be on layer 0 and other parts might be on work when you're doing other stuff. And so it's better just leave layer 0 always on. All right, now we're going to go to scenes. I'm going to go plus. And save it as a new style. Create the scene. I'm and rename you work. We want to make sure that the camera location probably doesn't matter, but we'll leave it there. Hidden geometry, yes. Visible layers, yes. Um, active section paints, if you're using them, sure. Style and fog, yes. Shadows, settings, yes. And access location, yes. So we'll hit enter to finalize that. You can see it updates that, and it creates a little tab right here for work. I am now going to switch back to layers. And because everything here is already highlighted, I'm going to Control Z to copy. And I'm in entity info, I'm going to switch everything to pose. And turn off work, turn on pose. And actually, you know what? Let me go back onto work and go file, or rather edit, paste in place. You remember all of these were already on work. So we've actually got two copies of our figure right now, existing on two different layers. In fact, you can see one of them is on the pose layer and one of them is on the work layer. So I turn off work, turn on pose, and I'm going to turn off my hiddens. I'm going to view the shadows, and I'm going to also muck with the styles. So let's say this is something that I'm going to use for on my site. I want to show off the work that I've been doing. So you're going to find a style that works for you, that you like, and then you're going to alter it. First thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to move this up to the origin point there, because I don't want this guy actually below the floor. And you can see where his shadow starts. So what I'm going to do is mess with these styles just a little bit. Find one that I like. And I'm sure that you've played around with these. There's a bunch of different ones. Let's go ahead and unselect anything. For this guy, that's probably not the style that we want. Let's go with the woodworking style because I like the edges. We're going to go to Edit. Here we can start messing with backgrounds and whatnot. I'm going to set my background as white. It's not going to stay that way. I can turn on the sky and the ground. Why not? Sure. These different things here let you muck with individual portions of this style. So if we click on the first one, here, do we want to show edges? Yes, no. You can see the difference that has. And in your render, if you want something to look more like how it's going to end up being, then you might want to turn off edges. I like a cartoony look when I show off my model, so I'm going to keep the edges. If I turn on back edges, you can see what effect that has. That's great for like the schematic kind of things. In this case, no. Profiles is going to be how thick those lines around your edge are showing. So let's say if I were to make you a 4, you can see what effect that has. It gives it a more thicker, again, a more cartoony sort of a look. I'm going to stick with 3, I think. Depth Q. This is, if I zoom in on it a little bit, in particular, like under here, you can see what effect that has on, like the edges are just like these edges are basically where the edge of that object is at. The depth Q is these lines that are a part of your model. Extensions are going to be like if you imagine a line coming out beyond these, like if it was a hand drawing or something. Endpoints, you can see what that does to your model. Again, a lot of these things, much like the rest of SketchUp, is geared towards architecture. And so you may want to present a building or a drawing of a building and make it look like your classic, hand drawn on a drafting table sort of a thing. And so that's what a lot of these are for. So a lot of them I'm not going to muck with. Again, jitter, that's another one to make it look like it's hand drawn. Typically for my renders, I keep it with edges and profiles 3, colors all the same. We come on to the next one. We can change what the color of our default colors are. I'm not going to mess with them. I like knowing that my default is white and my inside is gray. If you start messing with those, and when you go back to working, it might screw you up. You do have some other things that you can muck with. Again, you can see how it has an effect here. The difference between these two guys is basically just how the shadows interact. You can see it here. The shadows are very hard light. It's just the entire face that gets affected by a shadow is colored. Here it's a much softer, more natural sort of a shading. This one, well, there you go, display shading using textures. If you're using textures in your image, like with the paper model that we did earlier, that's where these would show up or not show up. This guy here, if you have something that's entirely colored, like colored all different kinds of colors, but then in your working model, if you want them to appear all white in all one color, that's what you would use this for. X-ray, as it describes. All right, we'll turn that off, go back to this guy. The next one in here, you can change the color of the sky in the background. Sky, I'm going to make it a little bit more blue by turning these guys down. You have the option of playing with either RGB, HSB, HLS, or a color wheel. I wish that you could input hex colors. I'd be a lot happier with that as a web developer, but you take what you're given. All right, there's a nice color for the sky. Ground, let's make you a little bit more, it says RGB, but here it says HSL. That's wonderful. There we go. I'm gonna make you a little bit darker. All right. Transparency would be if you had a model that actually went below the ground, would you want it to show or would you want it to look cut off? That's what that's for. Here is where you're really going to want to add some stuff. This is the watermark section of your styles. Especially if you're going to be showing off your models like on a Facebook page or on a forum or something, and you don't want your renders to get stolen and used by somebody else. You're going to want to put watermarks on there. So you could either do that in Photoshop, post, or you could do it right in SketchUp. So let's say I'm going to do it in SketchUp. I'm going to add a watermark. So I click plus. I'm going to go ahead and find wherever it is that I have created such a watermark. I think I have one in here. There it is, the Wulong Toys watermark. Click open, and you can see it just splatters it across there, but we have some options. We can make it as a background element or as an overlay. We'll give it a name. Let's keep it as watermark. Now I'm going to want mine to be a background element. I'll click next. And sure, why not? Here we can actually make it like how much of it is it shows, how transparent it is. Stretched. No, I want mine tiled. There it is. You can see it all across in the sky there. Wulong Toys. We can also reposition it however we wish. If we want our watermark to be like in the corner or in the center or whatever have you. You can also mess with the scale. I'd prefer to have it tiled across the screen all over the place so that, again, somebody wouldn't be able to just crop the image that I've uploaded. And we'll hit finish. So in this particular style, because of the fact that we're showing the ground, that ends up not receiving that watermark. We can always double click it and go back into, playing around with some of the options. Whoa. Let's make that a little bigger. There we go. So let's say I don't want that ground showing after all, or the sky, but I do want to make you some other color. There we go. And where is why isn't my watermark showing up? Oh, because I made it a mask, that's why. See, there it is. So I'll say okay. And then this last one, this has to do with when probably stuff you're never going to mess with. It's like when I click on this, what color do I want that box to be? Do I want it to be blue, red, whatever? So I generally don't mess with that one. Now in here, you can see it made a whole bunch of changes. We made a whole bunch of changes to this original woodworking style too. And it has this like recycling arrow. If I click this, it's going to reset everything, all the changes that I made back to whatever woodworking style 2 originally was. Um, it gives you a little bit of a description that it creates based on the changes you've made. So I'm going to then highlight where it says woodworking style 2, and I will call you oolong style. Enter. Let's see. Do I have to click here? Yes. Okay. Hitting here is what changes it back, reverts it. All right, so I named it Wulong style. I clicked that, that updated it. So now that is actually a style that I can use later on if I want. If I come back to select and I click on the little house, these are all the styles that I have clicked on already. So I can reuse them later if I wish to. You can also save the styles that you've made. Like if I save this guy and put it somewhere, you don't have to keep recreating it for every file. You can just import it and then use it in like all of the things that you make just so that it's available to you. All right, so we've got this. I'm now going to go back into my scenes. So I've got this guy looking the way I want him to. I've got the shadows, I've got the styles. Let's go ahead and, you know what, we'll even maneuver him a little bit, change him around. I'm going to grab it from here. Just bring that out a little bit. And this one I will move forward some, just so it's a little bit different than the working one. From there. There we go. So we've got some positioning. We've got, you know what, I'll even rotate that. And I switched to X-ray view so that I can rotate it based on where that ball joint is, not on where the outer portion is. There we go. All right, there's our guy. So now I come back to scenes. I'll hit plus, and this one I will call pose. You'll see it adds another little tab. So if I click on work, you can see it takes me back to the same styles, the same, what was visible, what wasn't visible, everything that we had set up in that work scene. So now I could continue to do work here if I wished. And then when I'm ready to export my renders or whatever, I can then go to the pose scene. And that's already all set up exactly how we want it. So let's say, here's where creating components really comes into its own. So let's say we're in work and come into the chest, and let's just draw something out on it. And I'll pull that out a little bit because, I don't know, it doesn't matter, whatever. All right, so now that's sticking out. If I go back to my pose, then you can see it's been updated as well. Or go into this one and push that down. Obviously, you really wouldn't want to work inside of your pose scene because you've got all of your shadows on and everything. So it's going to slow your machine down, but you can see that updated my work one as well. Okay, so the last one we're going to do is going to be our print scene. So again, I'm going to grab all of this guy. I'm going to hit Control-C to copy, and I'm going to move this to the print layer. And I'm going to go to Edit, paste in place to put back the work one. And I will come down to layers. I will turn off work, turn on print. Now in print, I want, again, I'm going to mess with whatever styles would be best or make it more easy for me to determine what I'm doing. So we'll come back to styles. This time I am going to, we'll hit edit. And this time I do want all of my display all using the same, so that when we know that when we print it, it's all going to be one color anyway. So even though we've colored everything up for our pose, we know that the print one, like, doesn't matter how we've colored it up, this is what it's going to end up looking like. So I go with that guy, display all using the same. I'm not going to keep those. All right, what else can we muck with? Let's change the background color. I'm going to go to the color wheel this time. I'm going to make it a kind of a bluish grayish color. There we go. I don't want any shadows on. And we will call you and click that to update it. All right, now we got print style. If we go back to select, you can see there's print style, there's our woodworking style, and there's our Wulong style. All right, cool. We'll see you later, Daryl. All right. So for creating our print layout, I'm not going to get into the actual layout yet. I'll cover that some more next week, especially since it's getting to be 10 o'clock. But let's go ahead and just create the scene real quick. So I'll hit plus. We'll call you print. All right. And I can actually, if I right click on you, I can move you over in either direction that I wish. Put them wherever makes sense for you. I always tend to have work, pose, and then print, but it really doesn't matter. So when I'm ready to do some work, I can jump in here. When I'm ready to output, the print will go here. Now, why is work not changing the background color? Let's take a look. Because work, let's take a look. We'll change our style to woodworking style. Okay. And I'm now going to right click and update. Now we'll go to print and you see the background color changes. I'm also going to move this up so that it's where it should be for the origin. And I'll just hit update. And jump to the print, do the same thing with this guy. Although this one, we could even probably just drag them out individually if we wanted, since obviously we don't need them all grouped together. But let's move you, there we go, that's where we want. And we'll update that as well. And I will save you. Okay, so that is it for lesson 3. We've gone over creating the remainder of the limbs. We've touched on creating scenes, messing with styles, and messing with layers. For your homework, what I want you to do is I want you to mess with the pose, create some styles. I want you to mess with colors. I want you to work on positioning this guy. Put him in a cool pose. Play around with it. Go into here. Switch your views back and forth, showing hidden, not showing hidden, X-ray, so that you can maneuver these parts around as they would maneuver in actual physical space. Come up with a watermark for yourself to add that. Just get your pose looking really good. That's for your homework. Also, and this is a bonus, if you have the extra time, I want you to design some accessories to go with this guy. whether it's a sword or a shield or a gun, a helmet, whatever you like, backpack. Um, that's not required. For homework, just work on getting a good looking pose, have all of your scenes and your layers and everything set up properly. And like I said, bonus, go ahead and create some accessories to go with him. I will show you some stuff that I've created to go with this little guy, just to get your creative juices flowing a bit. You can see for my little guy, I created a hair helmet for him. I've also created like a Spartan helmet along with a sword and shield. Um, those have been test printed, the hair hasn't. Just to see what will happen. I don't know if I'll end up test printing this or not, but I created a chainmail cape so that it'll move and flex more like fabric would, and because of the way that this is designed, it will 3D print like this as chainmail. I also created a set of wings for this dude. Now, one thing I want you to notice is that in these wings, there's our upper arm, with just regrouped and with some added parts added to it. Um, so again, recycling parts wherever we can. Obviously, you don't have to make wings or any of this stuff, but if you find you have the time and you want to mess around with it, I'd love to see what kind of accessories these guys come up with. And next week we will cover the actual print layout, exporting your files, your STLs, and putting them into Shapeways and getting them ready to sell. So that's what we're going to cover next week. Any questions over the stuff I've gone over for this session? No questions? All right, cool. In that case, have a great week, guys, and I will see you next Saturday.
Thanks a lot.